Hello friends, good morning and welcome to the EduSite Network. Our topic of discussion today is economy and enterprise in Indian culture. This shall be the second part of this lecture, and first part has already been covered previously by our subject expert. And with this I would like to introduce our subject expert, Dr. Shankar Kumar, Assistant Professor, Department of History, Hindu College, University of Delhi. And I also request sir to begin our today's lecture. Thank you for coming, sir.
Good morning, viewers, and thank you, Urvashi. This is the part 2 of the discussion that we had already initiated with reference to Indian culture, the dimensions of Indian culture with reference to its economy and enterprise. And we had already stated towards the beginning of the lecture itself that our perspective would be primarily historical, and it is through that we shall be trying to explore the permeation of the sense of enterprise and the changing attitude towards various occupations over a long period of time in Indian history, over its entire civilizational phase. And it is with this reference that we had begun our discussion from the beginning of the civilization itself in the subcontinental context, and that is the Harappan situation, where we talked of the pre-Harappan developments at Mehergarh, which is primarily in the Neolithic phase, dating back to around 7000 BC. And hence the antiquity of economic activity leading to significant production of surplus, which becomes very instrumental in the growth of several institutions at the civilizational stage, which go on to infuse a sense of risk taking, a sense of organizing several resources, be it labor, be it resources, natural resources, the sense of enterprise that is induced through all these. So it is with that reference that we had begun our discussion, and we went on to track the growth across the Harappan times, when we did talk of the fact that there were several obvious limitations in terms of technological development. That iron was not known, iron plowshare was not used all through the Harappan civilization, and that meant that there was some kind of a limit to surplus production in agricultural realm. Particularly with reference to the fact that the overall situation in Harappan times, the geography of Harappan civilization was by and large semi-arid, with the rainfall not exceeding more than 40 centimeters per annum. And this was in deep contrast to what we get to see subsequently in Indian civilization in the Gangetic plain, that is in the later Vedic times, when most of the middle Gangetic plains was actually colonized by agrarian population. And we also saw that apart from the fact that during the Rigvedic times, that is from around say 1500 to 1000 BC, there is not much talk of agricultural activities through the textual reference that we have, or even through archaeology. But subsequent to it, in the later Vedic times, the texts, the contemporary texts, are also replete with several references to agriculture, agricultural operations, a variety of grains, and even oxen and plowshare, and so forth. So what it tells us is that there is an obvious sense of dynamism. There is an obvious sense of getting into economic pursuits which are more rewarding from the civilizational point of view all through the Vedic times. And despite the fact that having begun essentially as pastoral people, the Aryans, the architects of Vedic civilization, Vedic culture to begin with, go on through the process of interaction with the local population, and there is some kind of a give and take, there is some kind of a cooperation, and this is something which needs to be decoded through several references in later Vedic texts or even early Vedic texts of some kind of skirmishes with non-Aryans, so to say, or the people who were not actually socialized with the Rigvedic way of life. Despite the fact that beneath this description of skirmishes, the economic process of give and take, the kind of interdependence, the cooperation, and the knowledge permeation, so far as agricultural operations are concerned, that is something that goes on. And this is also evidenced through the existence of several loan words in Vedic vocabulary, which are actually picked up from local population. In fact, quite a few agricultural implements are actually loan words, which again go on to testify that it were the local people who probably were engaged in agricultural activities, and with the Rigvedic people coming into contact with them, gradually these people also took over to the new economic pursuit, and that is how our civilization grew. And the actual fructification of this cross fertilization of ideas and techniques of agriculture, even the implements, knowledge related to it, is evidenced in 6th century BC, which is the by far the most important, we can say, turning point in ancient Indian history in terms of century, because it is here that we get to see quite a few new developments, not only in the realm of economy and enterprise, but also say religion, culture as a whole. The landscape itself had transformed. So from an essentially pastoral with little bit of agriculture and rural kind of a landscape, 6th century BC presents to us a totally transformed kind of scenario in ancient India, with the North Indian geography dotted with several urban centers, and there are new historical players now, and that is what we had spoken of in the earlier discussion, that it is through the emergence of these social groups and the formidable role that they played in the economy and politics of the time, which again tells us about the sense of enterprise, sense of risk-taking, sense of resource mobilization, and the associated skill and several other growth of institutions which fostered the sense of enterprise here. And it is in that context that we had spoken of the 3 M's becoming very important now: monks, merchants, and monarchs. And probably if we think of the monarchs as formidable territorial absolutist monarchs who had despotic kind of outlook, then it is around 6th century BC that for the first time we get to see in Indian history entry or appearance of such monarchs, because the Vedic and later Vedic kings, though they were also referred to as Raja, but they were no match to the power and resources that the monarchs of 6th century BC, territorial kingdoms in North India enjoyed. And it is through the Mahajanapadas, 16 conventional Mahajanapadas, that we get to see that gradually the territorial monarchs became became the triumphant kind of form of polity. Territorial monarchy became the triumphant form of polity, and by the time we reach 4th century BC, this is best seen through the coming up of the Mauryan Empire, which again shows through the from the point of view of historical process. It shows the gradual strengthening of the historical trajectory which had pushed territorial monarchs into prominence, and that had become the dominant mode of polity, and which had actually fructified in the form of a vast territorial empire spanning almost the entire subcontinental area that we identify India today with, including several parts in the northwestern part of the subcontinent, including the present-day Pakistan and Afghanistan. This is of course barring the peninsular states like Tamil Nadu and Kerala, which obviously were outside the Mauryan Empire. Nevertheless, what we find is that the entire stretch of the subcontinental land had been brought under the Mauryan Empire, and the processes triggered around this time again does tell us that it is not always at the behest of the state that these transformations are happening, but as we just talked about it, that the historical processes of change in the realm of economy and also the sense of enterprise that is associated with it were something that had already been triggered around 6th century BC. And it is the state which is over a period of time increasingly trying to latch on to these resources which had already been generated, the profits which were constantly being generated through different economic pursuits, even non-conventional pursuits. It is not only through agriculture. And that is best witnessed through the overriding concern for augmenting revenue for the state in Kautilya's Arthashastra. As we all know that Kautilya's Arthashastra is contemporary of the Mauryan times, and despite the talk of Kautilya's Arthashastra not being exactly descriptive in nature, and these days historians speak of Kautilya's Arthashastra, they try to understand Kautilya's Arthashastra as some kind of a text which projects the ideal type of the state, monarchical state, and duties of the king and several other state apparatus, its role and anxieties and so forth. But the fact remains that even a cursory reading of Kautilya's Arthashastra would give this impression that the major concern for the state was to augment revenue. So much so that several ways and means are suggested in Arthashastra to the king, to the state, through which the state can still further its revenue basket, or we can say new avenues for revenue generation were explored all through the text in Kautilya's Arthashastra. So much so that even superstitious beliefs which were in existence around that time, the book suggests that the king can think of ways and means through which even these superstitious beliefs can lead to some kind of revenue generation for the state. So in the name of entertainment, in the name of some kind of road shows, they can do that. And that tells as to what must be the state of affairs around that time. The point for us to pick up from this this kind of a picture of Mauryan times is that we already were witnessing a time when quite a few not only individuals but even corporate bodies had already got into several economic pursuits leading to surplus, leading to profit, and it is this profit, it is the site of this profit, it is the loci of all these profit generating enterprises which the state is in a way greedily looking at and is trying to siphon it as a revenue for itself in order to maintain its vast bureaucracy and army and personnel, which is so vividly described along with their salaries in Kautilya's Arthashastra. Therefore, the sense of enterprise that we usually think that it can be induced through state policies and so forth, we will come to that aspect also. It is not, I'm not suggesting that it was merely one way kind of a thing, because we do find in Kautilya's Arthashastra reference to the policy like Janapad Nivesh. Now, this Janapad Nivesh is nothing but we can say some kind of a historical parallel to the present day special economic zones. And what these special economic zones today are, all of us know that it is that patch of land where the state wants the industrialists or economy to move and produce something, generate some economic value over there, which eventually will create job opportunities for the local population, will lead to the economic development of that area. And since that area today is not so developed, therefore the state gives some inducements to these industrialists to set up their plants and factories or exporting units, and the state to begin with reduces or does away with say excise duty or other taxes which usually an industrialist or an entrepreneur would end up paying had he been producing the same thing elsewhere. So this is a kind of a policy where the state directs the development to happen at a particular patch. And in Janapad Nivesh, it is almost the same thing that we get to see. So what is it, Janapad Nivesh? All of us know that Janapad is a piece of land where some people live, and that area is to be invested in. So it could be like a barren piece of land or uninhabited piece of land where people are actually not residing to begin with, but that area does hold the promise of generating surplus, economic surplus, if people start living in that patch of land and start doing some economic activity, say like agriculture or some artisanal activity or something else. What does the state gain out of it? Why should the state be bothered for for furthering or pushing such policies? That is not a short-term perspective for the state, but it is a long-term perspective with which the state is looking at its role and benefit, and that is that to begin with, the people who have been settled in the new patch of land will not be taxed. So the entire profit will accrue to these risk-taking entrepreneurs actually. And over a period of time, when these economic activities have already stabilized on that patch of land. People have started or people have socialized with the new way of life on that patch of land. Then eventually the state apparatus will come and at a future date that area will start giving some revenue to the state. It is the actual described context in the ancient times is not entirely economic. But as it is true with several other descriptions in ancient times, with the obvious sense of religiosity or acquiring merit, which are overtly expressed beneath the covert design of economics or beneath the obvious, you can say, interplay of economics. So, be it the Satpatha Brahman, which is again a later Vedic text, and we are this is a very oft quoted example, particularly with reference to ancient Indian history, is that the practice was that in the Gangetic belt, as the Aryans were increasingly colonizing the Gangetic belt and were moving eastward from the Indo-Gangetic plains to the present day, you can say, eastern UP, Bihar area. So, it is in that context that Shatpatha Brahman refers to a practice where in the presence of a Brahmin, the Kshatriyas or the kings are asked to pick up a stick and the priest, the Brahmin present, would fire that, would lit that piece of stick, and the Kshatriya or the king would throw it into the forest, and the area, the part where that stick with fire reaches after throwing, till that area or the entire patch up to that mark becomes the property of the Kshatriya, of the king. So, this is the actual description, and the way it has been decoded in terms of the actual economics at play is that probably it was through the clearance of the forests that the land was rendered fit for cultivation. And we all know that by around this time iron plowshare had already been introduced, and this is an area which is quite unlike the Harappan area because this is an alluvial soil area with a rainfall average of around 100 to 150 centimeters per annum, which is extremely good for not only wheat but even rice paddy cultivation. And we already know, we also know that by around 6th century BC, transplantation of rice had also been introduced in this part of India, and hence the output had increased manifold. And it is through these descriptions which are actually ensconced in religious vocabulary or religiosity, so to say, but one has to decode these references in order to elicit the actual economics which is at play. And it is this kind of process through which historians try to understand the actual economic dynamics at work. And similarly, in the case of Janpad Nivesh during the Mauryan times, we can make out that the intent of the state to get an uninhabited patch of land populated, or by transporting people to the new patch of land and getting agriculture and other economic pursuits operationalized, initiated in those areas, probably had this covert goal beneath the obvious sense of acquiring religious merit, and the people who were actually given that piece of land usually were a group of Brahmins or belonging to other religious groups. So the stated sense was religious, but in real terms, one has to understand that these donees of this piece of land, who obviously on the face of it were some religious outfits, Brahmins, Buddhists, Jain, or other religious outfits, but they also were harbingers of new economic activities in these new areas all across Deccan and South India. And it is at their behest that intensive agriculture, so to say, began in these areas. The Brahmanical social structure got introduced in these areas also at their behest. The civilizational matrix of life involving urban centers, trade, surplus production, exchange, coins, punch-marked coins, potteries, all these probably got inseminated in these areas. This is not to cut into the ingenuity of the local people who must have been residing in these areas, but this is just about the two-way process through which this kind of a change was triggered. And although individual accounts are not referred to, or because of the nature of sources, individual accounts are hard to find, but one can very logically sense the prevalence or the operationalization of the sense of entrepreneurship here, because no one left on one's own would want to go and inhabit in an uninhabited area where the circumstances are not conducive to begin with, and where one has to virtually start from the scratch. And yet we find that not only on their own, but even at the behest of the state, such policies are being resorted to. And the capacity of the corporate bodies, the capacity of the agencies beyond the state in getting economic activities organized, in pooling together the resources, be it labor, be it organization, be it natural resources, be it managing their state of affairs, is something that again we have already spoken of through the introduction of the punch-marked coins, which are regarded as the first metallic coins of ancient India. And we all know, we have spoken about it in the last discussion also, that it is somewhat surprising to find that punch-marked coins which were issued most probably by the trade guilds or manufacturing guilds in ancient India around 6th century BC, went on probably intensifying all across and up to the Mauryan times. Despite carrying the picture of the Mauryan Empire as a very vast, centralized and bureaucratized kind of an empire, the fact remains that they were still not issuing their own coins, and the entire architecture of Mauryan economy probably vested on structures which were prepared earlier. and they were prepared at the behest of these corporate bodies, these non or beyond the state actors. So these shrenis or these guilds began their operations, began their pursuits outside the ambit of the state to begin with, and gradually the state came to regulate, organize, and hence siphon off some bit of profit that they were making. And the fact that these shrenis or these manufacturing and trade guilds also engage the state subsequently for, say, for their protection matters or for maintaining their own order of things, and the king respected that. King was expected that the monopoly or the powers of specific trade bodies, trade guilds and manufacturing guilds or the shrenis are not you can say infringed upon, and that tells us the actual state of affairs in terms of economy and entrepreneurship, that it was probably generated by actors beyond the state, and gradually state is also getting into this entrepreneurship business, so to say, in order to augment its own revenue in the long term perspective that we just spoke of with reference to Janapad Nivesh. Then there is another practice in ancient Indian culture which goes on in its feeble form, so to say, even today, and this is the practice of land grant. Now again, if you look at the evidence, if you look at the records, it will not state the economic sense that lay beneath this practice. All it says in overt terms is again accruing merit. So land, a patch of land would be granted to some religious bodies, and subsequently from the later later Gupta and post-Gupta times, we also find that these land grants were given to administrative bodies, and they were given to other people also beyond religious outfits and so forth. But as I said, that the stated purpose is again accruing merit not only for the person who has donated it, but also for their forefathers. So 3 to 4 generations of the actual donor is referred to, and it is stated that their yash and kirti would be long lived, and it would stay till the existence of sun and moon and so forth. But again, as we discover, if we focus on the historical processes at work, we find that all through these periods, and if one works out the actual geography of the land grants, the areas which are given away as land grants in the later Gupta and post-Gupta period, we find that they are on the periphery and not in the core of the Mauryan Empire, the erstwhile Mauryan Empire. So it is not the densely populated Indo-Gangetic belt or the Gangetic plains that these grants are made, but they are made beyond that, down into the Deccan and South India, which lay on the periphery of the Gupta Empire also. And that again tells us that these land grants are mostly made with the intent of starting or kick-starting some agricultural operations in these areas. Of course, in the situation of extreme duress for the state, as evidenced through the reference of Kali age, we do find subsequently even inhabited piece of land was granted in lieu of probably the salary to the administrative staff once the state did not find itself in the position to give cash salary or remuneration. They started giving patches of land, and that's how R.S. Sharma proposes that probably feudalism or feudalization tendencies began in India. But but moving away from this feudal debate, what we do see that basically it is with the intent of inhabiting the uninhabited pieces of land, and the people who are actually moving into these areas are the actual entrepreneurs, so to say, although description is again ensconced in religiosity, but they are the ones who actually begin agriculture and other civilizational, you can say, operations here, and the interplay of trade, commerce, production, polity is something which we can very easily decode through these endeavors, and the temple states, so to say, technically, or for that matter, in the post-Gupta period, emergence of tirtha sthals was yet another way in which we can see these religious practices impacting economy and triggering the process of urbanization in these areas, which had earlier not seen many urban centers at work. And therefore, there is an implicit sense of entrepreneurship, there is an implicit sense of risk taking, there is an implicit sense of resource mobilization and organization of production that is happening at the behest of these donies. And we are told through several evidence belonging to this period that they are the ones who are aware of the agricultural calendars, they are the ones who are aware of some of the agricultural techniques, the agricultural cycle, the grains, the seeds, the pattern of harvesting and so forth, and that is how probably intensive agriculture began in these uninhabited areas in the Indian history. And also important is the fact that all through the post-Gupta period, we do get this evidence that despite the talk of feudalism having set in and the economy not registering the kind of prosperity that probably it registered in the Gupta and Mauryan period, there was disruption of the Roman trade, the iconic Roman trade that again we shall come back to in the post-Gupta period, and that meant that high value transactions were not happening, resulting into some kind of a ruralization of economy, and the artisanal groups and several other townsmen probably had to come back to their villages, and that is how ruralization is spoken of in the post-Gupta period. And this gives this kind of an impression that enterprise or economy was at its lowest ebb around this time. But again, moving away from this big picture that is projected with reference to the feudalization of Indian economy, also important is the fact that most of the texts related to technical texts related to agriculture actually come from this time. This is also true that quite a few technological devices For instance, we are told of Araghatta, which again is a mechanical device which transforms we can say the horizontal energy, horizontal force into vertical output. So there is a kind of a cycle ring, and on that ring there are several buckets attached, tied, and those rings are rotated, and if there is water beneath the surface, or if there is some kind of a well or a pond, then that movement of the ring would ensure that these buckets would pick up the water from that pond or from that well beneath the working surface, and once the movement goes on, then once it comes up, that water would be poured on the field for agricultural purpose. This is something, why I pick up this example is because such operations are something which can be witnessed in rural India even today. And these were subsequently drawn by oxen also. So through the innovative use of lever principle or gear principle, we find that this kind of irrigational device is introduced in India from around the post-Gupta period. And by the time we reach the Sultanate period, again, of course, it is spoken of with reference to the Persian wheel and so forth. So I'm not getting into the actual infusion, or I'm not tracking the direction from where these techniques actually came to India. All I'm saying is that they became part of Indian culture, they became part of the rural lifestyle from around this time, and this is something that continues even today. And probably because of the ease with which this can be delivered, or because of the extremely economic sense through which this kind of technique works, or it was accepted by people as such, it became customary to have such devices or whatever. Nevertheless, when something of this sort continues for centuries together, one has to accord some bit of value to it as to how it actually was accepted by people. We are told through the works by scholars like Joseph Needham and so forth that post-Gupta period or the early medieval period is also the period where number of grains increase actually, and new areas are getting brought under agriculture, and that leads to a variety of grains. So earlier, suppose the rice variety was limited to 6 or 7, it becomes 17, it becomes 26. So there is this kind of positive development in terms of variety of agricultural produce, variety of agricultural techniques, new lands getting inhabited. Even in the feudal debate in Indian history, we are told that India did not experience serfdom quite like what we have or what we had in West European history, is on account of the fact that in India, in the early medieval period, there always was the possibility for the tenant, under some kind of feudal pressure, to move out of that patch of land in case the feudal exactions or the feudal pressure became extremely immense. So since uninhabited land, since barren piece of land was always available in plenty, not the entire stretch of Indian subcontinent had been colonized, had been brought under agriculture. Therefore, these people, these farmers or these tenants, under feudal duress could always move out of it and start their own operations. And this again is implicit with the, or this again tells us that there is fair degree of ingenuity, human ingenuity at work, there is fair degree of risk taking at work, there is fair degree of entrepreneurship at work all through Indian history. In the subsequent period, since we have been talking primarily of the ancient and early medieval period, now let us get into the other domain apart from agriculture and artisanship and coin making and so forth, or the financing part of it. Let us get into the explorations into the sea. One picture that we get so far as historical understanding of things is concerned with reference to the state, we are told that a monarch as big and great as Akbar did not get the chance to have a look at sea. He saw ocean for the first time around 1604, 1605, around the time he died, around the end of his rule during his Gujarat campaign. And that tells us about the kind of neglect that the Mughals had for seafaring or for their navy as such. And this is again quoted as one of the factors behind the subsequent dominance of the seafaring companies, the European companies, East India companies, be it of Britain, the Dutch, the French, and so forth, in the 16th, 17th century, and they were the ones who came via the sea route, circumventing Africa across Indian Ocean. We are told of Vasco da Gama's story. And what was novel in Vasco da Gama's voice was that instead of coming through the Arabian Sea, crisscrossing the land between the Mediterranean and the Arabian Sea, Vasco da Gama rather chose to circumvent Africa and come to Calicut. So he had to negotiate the high seas. And that is the novelty of Vasco da Gama's story, because till around that time, definitely we can say that even the Europeans did not know how to work out one's location while navigating in the high seas. So longitude could not be worked out, latitude could not be worked out to satisfaction. So the devices that they had around this time were probably not ideally suited to take them to the high seas, and it is in that connection that we are told of the story of Vasco da Gama, who probably took the help of a local guy. It could be an Arab, but it could also be someone from Gujarat. So opinion is divided so far as the identity of the person is concerned, and his name is spoken of as Kanha. And it is described that he had a device which was a local device, so to say. This is referred to as Rapalagai. Several ethnographic studies have also been carried out to work this out to greater satisfaction as to how it actually worked. And we are told of Rapala is again a Malayalam term, and it means wooden blocks tied with two strings, and those strings were held by the teeth, and that's how, and then polar star was sighted, and the angle was worked out, and through that reducing or increasing angle as you travel across the curve of the globe in the high seas, the latitude was worked out. So, this kind of a device again tells us about the state of affairs even in the maritime world, in the Indian Ocean scenario, at a time when Newton is on record having said or having made this statement in the British Parliament that till around that time, till around his lifetime, there was no satisfactory device to work out the latitude in the high seas. And here in the Indian context, we do get such examples where probably through ingenious efforts and through local innovations and so forth, these things were resorted to, and it had probably become part of life. So, it was a lifestyle issue for the people here. And it has not assumed some kind of an iconic proportion as a great discovery or invention credited to the Indians, but we do see similarly in the field of metallurgy and also boat making, ship making. There are several ethnographic studies which testify to the fact that Indians were ingenious enough, innovative enough to innovate in these areas. And therefore, let's conclude by saying that Indians had to their credit fair degree of entrepreneurship and enterprise to their credit, despite the fact that there were several social factors, economic factors which inhibited it, but examples are far too many. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for summing it up for us. And friends, this was our lecture on economy and enterprise in Indian culture, and we bring this to a close, of course, by thanking sir. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us, and thank you, friends, for watching. Have a great day.